Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. Despite some very welcome rain this week, fire is something that many Oklahomans have been thinking about. So today, SUNUP's Dave Deacon takes a look at some ways to not only manage, but also put up some safeguards against fire.
This time of year is usually a really good time to burn. This time of year, this year 2014, is not a good year.
John Weir spends a lot of time with fire. He teaches the science and art of prescribed burns, removing invasive plants, improving wildlife habitat, and reducing natural fuel, which can lead to devastating wildfire. Today, he's doing what they call in the industry mopping up, after a truck drug a loose chain sparking a wildfire in Payne County.
Right now, the 10-hour, 100-hour, and 1,000-hour fuels, which are the larger diameter stuff, like a lot of the dead logs, limbs, and stuff that are laying around, they're extremely dry, very flammable. So what happens is when you burn an area that has a lot of those in it, most of them are catching on fire. And they are actually burning for several days. We actually just did a burn 2 weeks ago, and 6 days after the burn, we still had stuff inside the burn unit smoking and actually flaming.
Weather conditions like we've had recently have made that possible.
We consider the most important weather variable for fire behavior to be relative humidity. You can have very high relative humidity when the dead fuels will be very moist and won't be able to burn. So you could still have a 40, 50 mile an hour wind, but if the humidity is high, it's not going to burn. So if relative humidity is the first factor. Once the relative humidity is low enough to have fire danger, then wind speed becomes the second most important variable. And we generally say to be on the safe side, only do a prescribed burn when it's 15 miles an hour or less.
There's a lot of times we'll have a good day to conduct a burn, but we won't burn. Because the next day the winds are supposed to be really strong and out of maybe a different direction that's not as safe. And so we wouldn't want to burn. It'd be a good day to burn, but tomorrow we know stuff's going to catch on fire and be smoldering. And if there's 40-mile-an-hour gusts predicted and it could, blow that way and escape, we're not going to do it. That's part of that planning process of a prescribed burn. That's what, again, makes it different than a controlled burn.
There is an important distinction between those two.
Controlled burns are debris burns. That's if somebody burning a brush pile, burning trash, and things like this. Prescribed burns are burns that are conducted on the land for a specific objective to manage that land for, whether it be to control seed or improve wildlife or livestock habitat. That's what it's for.
To help develop plans for prescribed burns, the Oklahoma Mesonet created OK Fire.
OK Fire is our weather-based wildfire current assessment and future prediction system. It goes out 84 hours into the future. It's based on our Mesonet weather network, a tower of which you see behind me. We have 120 of these towers and measure things such as wind speeds and relative humidity and so forth.
It gives us that real-time weather, pretty much real-time, so we know exactly what the weather's doing. We can look at it and see where fronts are at, where wind shift lines are occurring, current conditions, what we'd expect, and then with all the other tools that we have, the prescription planner, the fire weather stuff, the forecast models that it offers us. Great tool. All the burners that I know here in this state, they all rely on it heavily.
With this much information available and a well thought out burn plan, prescribed burns are rarely a threat to life or property.
You have the numbers of neighbors, you have the phone numbers of the local fire departments and anybody else you need to call. But also what you want to do in those plans is you have a contingency for an escape fire. In stressful situations like that, if something was to escape on that, easy things become difficult and difficult things become impossible for most all people. And so you want to have thought that through long before it ever happens to you, so you know, what are we going to do if it does escape? And we just did a survey looking at burn associations all over the Great Plains, and of 1,094 burns that was conducted, there was only 16 fires out of those 1,094 that they required somebody else to help them put something out. That's 1.5% of all the fires that were conducted. That's really good. That's a good safety record to show that private landowners know what they're doing when it comes to fire, and they can work really well together, especially the burn associations.
Still, metal dragging on roadways will light wildfires from time to time. To learn what homeowners can do to protect their property, I spoke with Oklahoma Cooperative Extension's Terry Bidwell. So Terry, what should homeowners be thinking about whenever to keep their home safe in fire season?
Well, there's two things you can think about is the landscaping around your home. What's that made up of? What are the materials that are in the landscape? Are they combustible? How you keep them managed and maintained, and then the materials that you have on your house. Some people have bought a house that maybe doesn't have the best materials, but you really need to assess that whole thing.
Okay, and what kind of materials do you have in this house?
The materials on this house are rock siding, and then what's not rock is concrete siding. So there's not much material on the surface that will burn except for the railing around the porch, which is cedar.
Okay, and even though that is cedar, the flame height shouldn't be that high because you have your grass manicure.
Right, the grass is very low. There's no shrubs that would combust right up onto that railing, and we do have some mulch in there that would burn, but all it'll do is smolder. So it's unlikely that would get into a fire, but you never know till you get hit with a fire how well your plans will work.
You also have your trees a pretty good distance away.
Yeah, the trees are trimmed up where you can walk under them. Even I can walk under them. So you've broken the fuel connection from the grass to the trees of a ladder fuel up into that tree, so it should not burn.
And Terry, just because it's green doesn't mean that it won't burn.
That's right. This thicket here is green, and you would assume wrongly that it won't burn. When you get into a wildfire situation with high winds and droughty conditions, this material, even though it's green, will ignite, just like we've seen in a lot of wildfires. Oak trees, this is rough leaf dogwood, these things will catch on fire under extreme conditions. So don't assume because it's green that it won't burn.
And especially in a thicket location like this.
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of fuel. So when one of these goes up, and we've had them, I've been on a lot of fires where these burn, when you get these on fire, the radiant heat off of them is tremendous. If this thing was much closer to that house, I'd be wanting to prune this back and get it out of the way, because you'd be jamming this up on the house. Firefighters couldn't get in here. This is probably 40 yards from the house, so it's probably not a problem, but you never know.
Right, and ashes and embers can travel from this a pretty good distance.
Absolutely, there'll be a lot of material come off of this flying up toward that house trying to gain an entry point.
So Terry, let's talk about the soffit vents.
Yeah, the soffit vents can be an entry point for firebrands under a wildfire when you've got hard winds driving those embers in, and so the soffit vents are something that is an entry point if embers get in there. And so after a wildfire moves past your home, you need to go into the attic and check those. Generally, soffit vents are just louvered. They don't have screens on them, but it'd be better if they did a fine mesh screen such that, well, insects or anything can't get up in the attic.
So even though there is that mesh in there, homeowners need to get in there and look at it, because it could come back to bite them.
Possibly. The insulation normally that you put in an attic won't support combustion, but you never know. So you want to go into the attic and look.
Okay.
For several hours, in fact. Well, the gable vents, which are high up, now those tend to have larger louvers, and most all the modern ones are fully screened, but that's something that you can't just look up there and notice that. You need to climb into the attic and see if you have screens on those. If you don't have screens, you need to get screens over those, because that's a very good entry point for fairly large firebrands.
So basically, you build a barrier with the house, and then you guard your entry points.
Right. It's just like a perimeter in a military or a law enforcement situation. Wherever the weakest point is the point you need to address, and make sure that you've done everything you can, that you don't get an entry into the attic.
Another thing to think about is this space that you have from tall grass here.
Right, and we've got a big space out here, so you see some interest on trying to have these, say, in 30 yards or something. I prefer 40 or 50 yards. What that allows is a safe place for the fire department to come in and set up their equipment, and they'll look at this and know they can come in here and they don't have to worry about burning up their equipment, or even worse, burning up a firefighter. This calls what's a defensible space, and so they've got plenty of room to maneuver in here. They're not going to get trapped. A lot of places don't have that, and they'll go by and look at a place that's fully engulfed with cedar and things right around your home. They're not going to go in there and work that, because you can't stop the fire under those conditions.
Okay, Terry Bidwell, thank you much. And for more information, you can go to our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet weather report. This week was a real lesson in the value of Mesonet to monitor moisture at both ends of the spectrum. On Tuesday, the Mesonet was being used to monitor where there was little air moisture. A map of relative humidity from 12:30 Tuesday afternoon showed how moisture dropped markedly from the higher moisture levels in the east, the green map areas, to low levels in central Oklahoma, the yellow area, to the exceptionally dry air, the red areas, where relative humidity values were predominantly below 10%. Part of why the relative humidity was so low was that air temperatures at 12:30 in much of western Oklahoma had climbed up close to 100, with 100 degrees reported at Cherokee and Altus. What a hot day in the west for early May, high 90s just as folks were eating lunch. Low humidities are a fire concern, and when combined with higher wind speeds, the combination can create hazardous fire situations. At 12:30, the average wind speed at Woodward was 25 miles per hour out of the southwest. At 12:30, a peak wind gust of 43 miles per hour was reported. 12:30 was also the time when a large fire started on the northwest side of Woodward. One day later, this fire had burned an estimated 13,700 acres. On Wednesday, meteorologists were using the Mesonet to monitor air with lots of moisture that could fuel severe storm development in western Oklahoma. A dew point map at 2:55 p.m. from Wednesday showed a well-defined dry line, the narrow yellow band stretching from Altus to Cordell to Fairview to Medford. East of the dry line, dew point temperatures were in the mid-60s. West of the dry line, dew points were below 30. A radar view of western Oklahoma from that same time period showed how storm cells were beginning to form in a curve just east of the dry line. The strongest storms at this time were in Texas. Moisture convergence is another way to monitor air moisture from the Mesonet. A moisture convergence map from 3 p.m. Wednesday showed convergence where storm cells were popping up. This moisture convergence was the yellow-orange band starting near Altus that went up by Cordell, intensified between Weatherford and Fairview, and then lightened near Cherokee. By 4:24 Wednesday afternoon, the storm cells were showing up much more dramatically on radar, yet still in a broad line just east of the earlier dew point map dry line. As storm development intensified and spread, the dry line retreated west back to the Panhandle, as we can see on a dew point map from 7:20 Wednesday night. Radar from that same time showed storms all along the Oklahoma-Texas border and moving into central Oklahoma. Hopefully you and your loved ones received some needed rainfall, yet were spared any storm damage. Thanks for joining us for another edition of the Mesonet Weather Report.
Kim Anderson, our crop marketing specialist, joins us now. And Kim, the latest supply and demand numbers have been released.
Yeah, they were released on Friday, and the one thing we know about those numbers is that they're wrong. Now, the market is using those numbers, the analysts are using those numbers to determine what the 14-15 marketing year prices are going to be. But as we get in new production numbers, as the harvest comes in, as we get into new demand numbers, as we get demand through export demand and domestic demand throughout the year, and as we get new foreign production numbers, we'll use those new numbers to adjust the prices that are established based on the numbers we got Friday.
And speaking of prices, current prices in terms of wheat, do you think we've reached the peak?
I think we're close to the peak. We've had a good $2 plus run up in prices over the last couple of months. There's signs that we're hitting the top now. Production is going to determine if prices go up from now, and we're not going to know how much wheat we're produced till it rolls across the scales. But there are signs that we're getting close to the top.
And what are some of those signs?
Well, some of those signs are U.S. and foreign stocks. If you look at U.S. ending stocks, now I'm talking about the 13-14 marketing year that ends on May 31 of this month. U.S. ending stocks, 583 million bushels. Last year they were 712. Notice less this year than last year. And next year they're projected to be slightly lower. The 5-year average, 776 million. Australia, now starting looking at some foreign crops and stocks. Australia, 199 million projected for this year, up from 156 last year and slightly below the 5-year average. Argentina, 64 million bushels this year, up from 11 last year, average 55 million. Canada, 372 million bushels this year, up from 186 last year. The EU, the European Union, 414 million bushels, up from 389 last year. Foreign stocks, about 6.3 billion, up from 5.8 last year. World stock, 6.8, up from 6.5 last year. Notice that the U.S. is the only one on this list that the stocks went down on the year. That means that we have adequate supplies of wheat throughout the world. And if the foreign countries have good harvest, then I think that's going to put a cap on how high our prices can go.
And then how do you see prices trending in the next marketing year?
Well, let's look at the year we're just completing. Go back last June, $7.40 from June the 1st to the 20th, about when the harvest started. On July 1, they were down to $6.70, stayed in that range till we got into September. Early October, they peaked at $7.40. February 1, they're down to $5.90. Now they're around $8, a little above that. We're starting this year at relatively high prices, and normally when you start relatively high, you've got more room to go down. And so I think that we'll, on a short crop, if we get the foreign production as we expect, we're going to peak out early and prices are going to trend out during the year. You lose Australia and Argentina's crop, they'll come back up just like they did this last year.
And finally, marketing strategy for producers?
Producers got to know how much risk they're going to take. Their production's down, so every bushel counts. They've got a good price right now. They can buy a call option contract for around, say, 65 cents at $8 wheat. That gives you a net of $7.35. Oh, 6 weeks ago, they'd have taken $7.35 in a nanosecond. Sell it at harvest, at least sell half of it and store half to the November-December time period.
Okay, Kim Anderson, Crop Marketing Specialist. Thanks a lot.
Eye infections are one of those costly nuisances that we face in the cow-calf industry. Research at Iowa State University back in about 2004 and 2005 indicated that on the average, a calf that has some level of eye infection, usually pink eye, that will have reduced weaning weights of nearly 21 pounds. And in today's calf market, that's really quite substantial. Also in that research, they took a look at if there's a possibility that we can select against eye problems as we work with our herds throughout the years. They take records from a number of cattle over several years' time and found the heritability of eye problems in beef cattle to be 0.18, or something that we'd call moderately heritable. That means to me that we can, over time, and the progress will be slow, but over time, we can select against those cattle that are more likely to have eye problems. As we watch our cows this summer, we might want to mark down in our record book those that have significant pink eye. And not only if culling time comes next fall, go ahead and ship them, but perhaps not keep replacement heifers out of those particular cows that had some problems. If you'd like to learn more about preventing and treating specifically pink eye as one of the eye problems that is so common in beef cattle, go to the SUNUP website. That's sunup.okstate.edu. And under show links, we'll have a link to a really excellent fact sheet about the prevention and treatment of pink eye in your cow-calf herd. We hope that over time, then, we can do some selection in our herds and reduce the incidence of eye problems that can be so costly when we come time to sell those calves in the fall. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Thank you, Glenn. And now we want to introduce you to the 2014 Champions of Agriculture and Natural Resources. Each year, Oklahoma State University's Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources honors its champions, people who have gone above and beyond, not only for Oklahoma agriculture, but also as leaders in their respective professions and communities. The 2014 champions of the land grant mission are David Howard, Rod Moselle, and Bob Funk.
I have a company that makes industrial food machinery, and through our extension and the centre we've been developing processes to control pathogens. The two things couldn't come together without the university's help, and we have a tremendous impact in food safety across not just North America, but we've taken that research internationally to South America and even as far away as Australia. None of that would be possible without the input from Dr. Mariana and other members of Food and Agriculture Product Center.
Fourth grade on, I was kind of getting OSU indoctrinated and getting to meet all the professors and do things. Then came 4-H and being up here for Roundup and 4-H Club, and of course being involved deeply in extension through that. And then I made a brief appearance here for school, and as I was starting my business, and ultimately had to stop or choose to. My banker thought I ought to stop to pay the loans, and so I've been engaged in that. But I've dealt with OSU's scientists in the research area and the extension area and the teaching area all these years, and just unbelievable folks. The land grant, I've gotten to see all three sides of the land grant mission, and it's amazing.
It's a great honor to be a DASNR champion, and for what OSU has done for us, it's great to be able to give something back to the community, give something back to the school, and being a DASNR champion is one of the best thrills of my life. And I'm so proud of the fact that OSU gave us this honor along with Rod and David, and we're very appreciative, and thank you very much for that great honor.
Once again, congratulations to this year's DASNR champions.
Hi, welcome to Shop Stop. Today we want to talk about hitch pins and lynch pins.
So we all use hitch pins when we mount equipment to our hitch, but we want to keep those in place, and typically we have the lynch pin that we attach to there, and it's separated.
If you just got a piece of chain, you can take your lynch pin and hook to it to your hitch pin, or you might even, if it's a specific application for it, you might even want to take a piece of chain from the pin and weld it to the piece of equipment so that it's always there when you need it.
Yeah, how many times have you gone out to hitch up and you've dug through the toolbox and can't find the pin, and if you have it attached to your implement, you know where it's at and ready to go.
So that's a tip here on Shop Stop. We'll see you next week.
Finally today, SUNUP intern Samantha Smith shows us a group of students here at Oklahoma State who are truly trying to feed the world.
A lot of people don't know a lot about hunger. They don't realize that 25,000 people die every single day of hunger. I think the Oklahoma State campus has about 24,000, so that's basically the population of the campus dying every single day of hunger and hunger-related illness.
Hunger is a growing epidemic across the globe, but students like Allison Slagle are choosing to do something about it.
Every year for DASNR Week, we like to bring a philanthropy on campus, and so this year we decided to do Hunger U because it actually came across Dr. Dameron's desk, and we thought it was a really cool thing because it lets students, give money, or alumni give money, but then it also educated students and then helped them kind of get out and do some actual philanthropy work, which is packaging meals. So last week they came and they set up a kind of a station where they handed out literature and talked to students about the hunger crisis and everything that's going on, and then this week is when we're packaging the meals, and so all the money we raised throughout DASNR Week and at our silent auction and different things, that went to pay for the food that we're packaging today.
The students are working with Stop Hunger Now, an international hunger relief organization. Together, they packaged over 10,000 meals for people in developing countries.
These meals are going to be used in developmental programs, primarily in developing countries, but also some here in the U.S. We focus on developmental programs like school feeding programs, vocational programs, agriculture programs, orphanages. The idea is that if you put the food into those programs, then people are more likely to attend the school, to attend the vocational program, to get an education, and then they can take that education back out into the community and hopefully break the cycle of poverty and hunger.
The packages are simple. They contain rice, soy, a vitamin packet, and dehydrated vegetables.
So it's 4 ingredients, and so what's happening is at the funnel stations they're putting in the vitamin packet, the rice, the soy, and the veggies. Then it moves on to the next station, which is our weigh station, to make sure it's the proper weight, and then it gets sealed, and then it moves on to the last station, which is boxing, and it goes in the box, and then it gets sealed up, and it heads to the people who need it.
Agriculture students like Slagle see the importance of feeding the world, and partnering with Stop Hunger Now gives them the opportunity to affect hunger across the globe.
It kind of baffles my mind that this one bag of food will feed 6 people, and so I think that's really important, just to let students know that there's a bigger world out there and that there's bigger problems than I have a test tomorrow. And so I think that's really important for every student, but as far as the students in the College of Ag, I think it's really important because we do all this work for food and for agriculture and natural resources, but we don't really think about where it's going, or I know some people have a hard time thinking like out of the United States, and so I think this kind of gives us a global scale and just to look at.
We've had enough food on the planet to feed every single person since the 60s. And the only way we're going to end hunger is it's mostly through getting people aware and knowledge and aware of the hunger issue. The food is the answer, but the way we're going to get that food to where it needs to go is getting more people involved and more people educated about hunger and what we can do to end it.
For SUNUP, I'm Samantha Smith.
And our congratulations to Samantha, our SUNUP intern for the past 2 years, who is earning her degree in agricultural communications this weekend from OSU. Hats off to her and all the other graduates. And that'll do it for us this week. I'm Lyndall Stout. We'll see you next time at SUNUP.